So obviously there's a ton of fingerstyle blues playing in E and A, but there's also fingerstyle blues playing in minor keys, and in particular in A minor, a couple classic examples, Hesitation Blues and St. James Infirmary. Hesitation Blues, the version I learned it from was the Jorma Kekkonen version on that first live Hot Tuna record, but of course it goes back to Reverend Gary Davis and lots of people have covered it. It's a good example because it is basically a 12-bar blues in C, except that the first four bars are just rocking back and forth between A minor and E7. And St. James Infirmary, if you played in A minor, again, like you don't just sit on the A minor, you also kind of alternate between the A minor and the E7 for the first couple of bars. So it's good to have an idea of how to do that, how to deal with going back and forth between those two chords, and then if you want to improvise over it, you've got to be ready to handle the fact that the chords are changing that quickly. So first, let's just talk about the chords and the groove and the right hand. So you're going to be alternating between A minor and E7, and that means the thumb is going to be going from the 5th string to the 4th string on the A minor, and then from the 6th string to the 4th string on E. So, right. And so, in terms of the groove, if you just kind of finger picked it with Travis picking, it might sound a little washed out, and you want it to be a little groovier. So, the first thing is just to break it down to just the thumb, do a little palm muting, so the bass is a little more percussive, and then you can really lean in on beats 2 and 4 and give a little snap. And the other thing that makes it snappy is if you relax your grip a little bit right after you play on beats 2 and 4, then you can, I'm exaggerating it, but you can basically like cut the note off a little bit so it feels a little more percussive. And that actually works if you're not playing a bunch of single note licks over that, but if you're just going to play some chords, you can kind of choke off the whole chord by doing that same thing of relaxing your grip. Sometimes on a chord like E, if you've got an open B string here, then part of the choking off of the notes is going to involve just kind of letting your fingers drag across the string that's ringing out. So lifting up will kill these two notes, but letting your hand drape across will choke that off. So that's just some things about the kind of groove to apply to a tune like that. And now let's talk about where the single notes, where the licks are going to go. So the two basic ways to think about it, or the ways to start building up your vocabulary, is not necessarily to think about like a blues scale, but to look at the chords and think, well, there are chord tones, just spelling out the notes of the chord, the root, flat third, and fifth in the case of A minor. And then in the case of E, the third, the fifth on the open second string, and the root on the high string, maybe the flat 7 here on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And so you can then connect up those those chord tones with the scale tones that lie in between. So if you've got root, flat 3rd, and 5th on A minor, you can connect it up so that you have root 2 on the open 2nd string, flat 3, 4 at the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, and the open high string. And then on the E chord, you can connect up the 3rd with the 4th at the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, the 5th, the flat 6 on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, and the flat 7 at the 3rd fret on the 2nd string. That's a lot of numbers. But if you can see it as chord tones, things that spell out the chord, and then connecting them up with scale steps, then the shape of the chord is kind of a mnemonic device. Oh yeah, those are the chord tones, and then these are the scale steps that connect them up. And so if you want to start putting that into practice, then you can start off by just doing a pinch for every bass note, going to stay on A minor just for a minute and rock between the 5th string and the 4th string, and then go up that scale. Or you could come back down to, if you want to get really fancy, you can alternate 5, 4, 6, 4 in the bass, right? 5th string, 4th string, 6th string, 4th string, and do. At that point, it's basically like a tongue twister for your hands, right? And if you want to take it one step further, then you can start to syncopate the melody like this. Which really not that much more is going on. I'm playing a pinch, a pinch, a pinch, and then immediately after going to the next scale step before the next thumb note. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1. So you can do all of that, and then you go to the E chord and take the same steps. Now on the E chord, it's a little tricky. You're holding down these two notes. You don't need to hold down this note of the E chord. Once you've used it, you're going to need to move that finger around. You could flatten out here, or you could move the index finger up like that, versus like that. Whichever is more comfortable for your hand. And so then the thumb is going to alternate, and again you're going to do just 1-for-1 pinches, thumb and index. Do it either way. And then again, if you want to make it more elaborate, you can alternate the 6th string, 5th string, 6th string, 4th string, 5th string, 4th string. So 6, 5, 6, 4, 5, 4. I can't even say it. I can play it though, which is, that's something. So now, like that. So the thumb is alternating like that, and the melody is going up. And I missed the 5th string that time. So just pick one. It's probably easier to just do 6, 4, 6, 4, but you can also do this one. And then you can syncopate that, right? So so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1. So now you've got some moves for both chords. But on a song like Hesitation Blues, or say St. James Infirmary, the chords are rocking back and forth every 2 beats. So now the thing is, can you do that with the thumb and then keep switching from scale to scale? Might be easier to think just in terms of chord tones, right? Like root, flat third, and then 5th of E to flat 7 of E, and then back to the flat 3rd of A minor. So, and there might be another way that's easier to think of it for you. It always helps me to think in terms of the chord I'm on at the moment. So this is the root and flat 3rd of A minor. This is the 5th and flat 7 of E, and then we're back to the flat 3rd and root of A minor. So, and then you can syncopate that. So in that case, I've got syncopation, and then I'm dropping the chord, and instead of playing the 4th string for my last bass note of the measure, I'm I'm playing a little bass run going to the 4th fret on the low string. A little bass run on the E that gets me back to back to A minor. And then since Hesitation Blues goes to a C7 in bar 4, it's a matter of figuring out what notes kind of lead into the C. I think Jorma's version, which is tricky because it's hard to hold down. What do you hold down when you're doing that lick up on the top string? Nothing? Or unfortunately, there's probably someone out there who knows exactly how to do it, and they can post a comment about it, and then we'll all learn something, including me, because I've always faked it. So that's just the whole idea of like playing through the possibilities is just to give you the flexibility that you can start to find licks, knowing what the territory is over those two chords, because you can get as elaborate as you want. And sometimes when I'm improvising in that situation, I will cheat and leave out bass notes, or really the most common thing to do is when you're on the E chord, it's an E7, right? So there's no need necessarily to play the root here. You could just play the open D string, because that's the 7 of E on an E7 chord. So that gives you a way to start getting into that and to have some vocabulary for improvising over the opening of a tune that's got that A minor blues groove. So I hope that helps. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, please leave them down below. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you're thinking about, and I'll see you next time.